If you're not sure about working on fiberglass, then don't be. Today we're doing body work on Project HRT and showing you how to work glass the right way. We're cleaning up the seams in the panels, and we'll show you how to flush mount LED taillights for an even cleaner look. That's all today here on Trucks.
Hey, welcome to the shop, and thanks for watching Trucks. Well, today we're going to jump with both feet into a subject that some people consider to be automotive voodoo, bodywork. And not just your average run-of-the-mill bodywork on sheet metal. Fiberglass bodywork. Now, if you've been around body shops much, you've heard the rumors about what kind of a royal pain fiberglass cars are to work on. And replicas and kit cars can be even worse, but that's not always the case. In fact, fiberglass has huge advantages over sheet metal, and being able to customize it faster and easier is just one of them. So it's not necessarily more difficult to work on, it's just a different animal.
So today, we're going to bust some of those myths and show you guys that customizing or repairing body damage on a fiberglass vehicle is something you can do, no problem. And today's victim is Project HRT, our Legend Motors 37 Ford that's already customized and looks as straight as a lot of finished paint jobs, even though it's still in raw gel coat. But it's still got the mold line right here from the two-part manufacturing process. Now, it seems fair to assume you could just sand these lines flat, spray on some high-build primer, block it, and paint it. But a lot of guys have been bitten by these mold lines showing through or mapping through their paint job, and here's why.
Now, a cross-section of that mold line would look something like this. And you can see that if you just resurface that mold line and level it down with the rest of the panel surrounding it, well, it's going to expose these layers of gel coat, which are harder than the polyester material underneath it. And eventually, due to the curing of the fiberglass and natural heating and cooling cycles, well, these lines are going to show through your paint, and they can't be buffed out. So the way to get around that is to completely remove the entire cross-section of layers that are being exposed and fill it in with a material that's as strong as the gel coat, and then you can do your paint and body work on top of that.
And that all starts with removing this mold line here. Now, this is a messy job, so wear the appropriate safety gear to protect yourself and do it in a well-ventilated area. We're using our downdraft prep station to remove the fiberglass particles from the air. And by the way, when you're done, wash up with cold water. Warm water will open up your skin's pores, allowing the fiberglass particles to get in even deeper, making you itch worse.
Ryan's using a carbide burr and grinding about 1 inch outside the mold line and digging about 1/8 of an inch deep into the polyester. While Ryan works on the rear fenders, check out the doghouse. Now, when we first got this truck, the body panels were pre-fit but not finished, which is perfect for us because it gives us options. For instance, we can do things like filling these seams, rolling lines, smoothing things over, basically putting our own personal custom touches on this truck. And since Legend Motors cures their bodies before delivery, there's no worries of anything shifting or changing shape on us. So one of the things that we're going to do is smooth this area up in here and bond these panels together so that when we open the hood, we look down in here and everything looks like a real street rod.
Using 50 grit discs, we can rough up the surface on each side so the adhesive has something to grab onto as it cures.
Okay, hold it right there, Ryan. Now, these bolts only serve as locators. They'll come back out after the adhesive is set up, which is going to take about 30 minutes. After that, we'll use fiberglass to fill in the holes.
All right, with the mold line gouged out, I went ahead and sanded the edges using 80 grit. Then we'll fill in that gouge with this two-part epoxy we got from Legend Motors.
The epoxy is mixed at a 5-to-1 ratio and will stay workable for about 20 minutes. Okay, with our inner aprons bonded to the outer fender, let's take a look at these hood sides. Now, these holes that you see were drilled in here purely for the mock-up stage. These holes are going to get filled in and these edges smoothed over, and that's going to start with 36 grit on a grinder.
We're using short strand filler to bridge the gap between the two panels, which will take about 10 minutes to set up. With the epoxy dry, my fenders are ready. Now it's just a matter of leveling it out to the height of the surrounding gel coat. Now we'll follow that with some 80 grit, just to smooth over some of the deep scratches. And now it's ready for the next step.
This is not epoxy or Bondo. The short strand fiberglass sets up as hard and as strong as the panels around it, making it less likely to crack or shrink back. Now, the sander will knock the basic shape into the filler, but you always want to come back with a hand board and do your final shaping by hand. All right, our gaps are filled, our screw holes are filled, we got everything blocked down with 80 grit. Now we're ready for primer surfacer, then the blocking starts all over again. When we come back from the break, we're going to show you guys how to gel coat those rear fenders. Stick around.
Up next, it looks like we're ruining the taillights, but have a little faith. And later, we'll lay out and mount our gauges. Stick around.
Welcome back, and thanks for watching Trucks. Today, we're working over the fiberglass body of Project HRT and giving you guys a few tips on working with fiberglass.
And what we're going to do next is not something that you see every day. Well, I've been to 14 county fairs and a horse marriage, and I hadn't seen this technique until we went to Legend Motors to pick our truck up. And what those guys do is to spray gel coat over top of a repair. And that way they create a rock-solid foundation that's ready for whatever type of work you have to do over top of it.
The gel coat is reduced approximately 5% with acetone to make it sprayable, and then mixed in a 10-to-1 ratio with MEK hardener.
Now this will take 3 coats to get the proper coverage and will be about 15 mils thick, which is plenty thick enough to block or prep for filler.
Now, like we were talking about earlier, having a fiberglass body gives you plenty of options when it comes to custom treatment. And since this is far from a stock truck right out of the box, well, you're not going to offend anybody if you want to change things up a bit and throw in some custom touches. And since we've already got Mini Cooper headlights molded into the front fenders, well, we want to do something trick for the taillights as well. Because customizing is all about putting your own stamp on a vehicle. Now, we started shopping around and found a couple of cool LED lighting options from Watson Street Works, like this one-piece sequential LED taillight kit. Now, we ended up going with Watson's 2-piece sequential kit. That includes all the wiring and hardware, lenses and buckets, with enough material on the lenses to allow it to be flush mounted and sanded down smooth for a nice clean look. Now, instead of mounting them in the fenders, we're going to sink them into the roll pan right here.
Now, working with fiberglass sucks because it's itchy, but in a lot of ways it's easier than working with sheet metal. For instance, cutting out the recesses to sink our taillights in is a very simple procedure and starts with a pilot hole on each side. Now we'll switch to a 1/2-inch bit, and utilizing our pilot holes, we create a perfectly rounded end that matches our taillight lens. Okay, perfect, that's what I wanted. Now the lens is higher than the fiberglass around it. And this beveled edge around here, it looks like a mistake, but it's not. Because when we put the filler in there, we can block it all smooth, and it's going to hold the lens in perfectly. Well, an hour's passed, and my filler's finally dry, and I hadn't done anything. But it takes that long for this fiberglass to set up. Now, if you look, you think we made a mess, but hey, have a little faith. Now this solvent's just a cheap trick to show you guys what this is going to look like finished up. So I'm going to hit this with 600 grit while you guys take a break. Hey, welcome back to Trucks. If you're just joining us, we're tweaking the bodywork on our Fiberglass 37 Ford, Project HRT. Now, the last step in flush mounting these LED taillights we got from Watson Street Works is mounting the buckets in the back of the roll pan. Now, we've had to trim this guy to compensate for the license plate bracket here. And we also glassed in a couple of the screws that came with the kit to hold the bucket in place. From here, all we have left to do is wire this into the chassis when we put everything together.
An original 37 Ford had a steel dash that looked a lot more like an old jukebox than this cool looking wraparound dash that Jamie Downs designed. But like a lot of things on this truck, they left the gauge placement up to us. Now, obviously, you want to put your gauges where you can see them. How else are you going to keep tabs of what's going on underneath the hood? Typically, the speedometer is centered in front of the driver, with the rest of the gauges on either side. But this dash is pretty small, so grouping everything together on the left side, well, it's just going to be cluttered and make the gauges hard to read. There's nothing wrong with the spacing and configuration of the way these autometer gauges are packed. So we're just going to use the box as our template. And the cab is small enough that we can put the gauges right in the center and still see them from the driver's seating position. Now we'll use a hole saw kit to get close. And trim the edges of the openings carefully, since we don't have a lot of flange on these gauges. Now, just like the rest of this truck, the fiberglass on the dash is nice, but it's not perfect. And we've got something really cool planned for these pieces, but you'll have to keep on watching to see what we do. And since some of these edges are visible from the outside of the truck, well, we're going to sand them down and make them as smooth as possible. Now this is just part of the deal when working with fiberglass. You're gonna get some air pockets. And since that's an exposed edge, well, we've gotta fill it. So here's a little tip for you if you're doing detail work like that. Small job, small tool. Using a single edge razor blade to mix your filler allows you to apply it with greater accuracy and less cleanup. Depending on your mix ratio, this stuff will set up pretty fast. So within a couple of minutes, you're ready to sand and then prime. Now we really like the symmetrical look of the dash. And really, from the driver's seat, you've got a perfect view of all the gauges. Plus, it leaves us room on either side for AC vents. And we'll come up with some sort of center console that has a radio and switches and stuff like that. But if you're putting together a truck like this, well, the cool thing about it, there's no wrong way to do it. You can lay this stuff out any way you want to. After all, it's your truck.
After the break, our flaws can't hide from the light, so we'll keep smoothing things out. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Trucks. Today, we're smoothing out a few rough edges on Project HRT. And I gotta tell you, I'm a little itchy. It feels like I've been insulating a house. But that's okay, the effort is well worth it. And the work we're doing on this body, well, it's gonna make the paint job smooth as glass.
Now, we've talked an awful lot about how nice the gel coat is on these panels. There's no TV magic going on here. This stuff is nice and straight, but it's not quite ready for paint yet. For instance, if you take a look at the reflection of this PDR light we got from Autobody Toolmart, you can see that the reflection is distorted.
And that means the panel has waves in it. Now, fixing the waves is easy. Seeing them is the hard part. But if you can learn to read a movable light, well, you can smooth out every inch. All right, with our low spots marked, now it's time to fix them. And we'll do that by cross-blocking with 120 grit on a 24-inch DuraBlock.
Cross-blocking means using the leading edge of the block and making an X pattern as you travel. This uses the straight edge of the block to level the surface you're working on.
All right, this is the low spot that the light showed us earlier. And what we're gonna do is keep working this area until we bring the surrounding gel coat down to the same height as our low spot. This right here is a real good indicator on when to stop, because the gel coat's getting real thin and we don't want to go any further. And for these spots right here, well, we'll come back, spray them with some high build primer, and block again.
Our goal here is to create a pleasant viewing experience on our street rod by eliminating as many inconsistencies as possible, like this door gap. It's narrow at the top and gets progressively wider as it gets down to the bottom, but it's hard to see in here because the gel coat's black and the panel gap is black, so we're going to fix that. By spraying a light-colored primer over the gap, it highlights the problem areas and creates a contrast that's easy to read. Okay, now take a look again and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's narrow at the top and gets wider as it gets to the bottom. So now what we're going to do is take a sanding board with 80 grit paper and just work the door edge to widen the gap. It's getting better. Now the panel gap is consistent, you can tell just by looking at it, but you can check it with a homemade gauge made with one of these paint stir sticks. It's about 1/8 of an inch wide. You just slide it in, just like gapping a spark plug. Yeah, that's nice.
Now we all know Pertronix for their high output flamethrower coils and their points conversion kits. Well, they also have their second strike ignition system. And unlike other multiple spark discharge boxes, the second strike provides a powerful second spark all the way through the RPM range instead of dropping off to a single spark around 3,000 RPM. This system supplements most existing ignition systems like Points, HEI, TFI, and DuraSpark, so no special coil or distributor is needed. It's an easy 5-wire hookup, and the CAO, or crank angle offset, is easily adjustable, so you can tune the strength of the second spark to where it works best on your truck. It has a built-in digital rev limiter and standard RPM output compatible with most tachometers. You can pick up your second strike ignition system for just under $300.
If you've invested in a newer truck and you plan on using it for a work truck, well, chances are you're going to need some sort of a bed liner system in the back to protect the sheet metal and paint. But launching your cargo into the tailgate at every traffic light is not the best way to protect that investment. Well, Dual Liner has the solution in the form of their modular bed liner systems that feature hard plastic sides and tailgate protectors and this zero skid rubber bed mat for the floor that's going to hold your cargo where you put it. These modular systems are available for most Ford, Chevy, and Dodge pickups, and they ship in a box that's not oversized, so it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to get it to your front door. Dual liner modular bed liner systems start at about $350. If you're wondering why we're paying so much attention to detail on this truck, well, it's because we want to be proud of it. We want to put our stamp on this thing because one of you guys gets to win it when we're done.
So keep watching and follow the build-up of this 37 Ford and go to PowerBlockTV.com to find out how to win this thing.
Thanks for watching Trucks. See you guys next week.